Every evening, when the sun began to fall behind the trees, a small train stopped at a quiet town station. And every evening, a golden brown dog sat near the yellow line and watched the doors open. The dog's name was Buddy. He was not very big, and his fur was the color of warm honey. He had floppy ears that moved when he heard a sound, and big, dark eyes that looked at everything with love. A simple green collar with a small silver tag was around his neck. Buddy came to the station at the same time every day. He did not need a clock. He knew when the 5:30 train was coming. He could feel it in the air. When he heard the faint sound of the train in the distance, his tail started to move, slowly at first. As the train came closer and its sound grew louder, his tail moved faster and faster. The train finally stopped with a soft hiss, and the doors opened. For a moment, Buddy stood still, his eyes fixed on one specific door. Then, a young man stepped out onto the platform. He had short, dark, brown hair and wore a simple blue jacket over a gray t-shirt. His face looked tired from a long day, but when he saw the dog, a warm smile appeared. "Hey, Buddy," Daniel said softly. He dropped his small backpack to the ground and knelt on one knee, opening his arms. The dog rushed forward, not with a loud bark, but with happy, quiet energy. Buddy jumped around him, licking his hands and face, pressing his head into Daniel's chest. Daniel hugged the dog tightly, burying his face in Buddy's soft fur. For a few moments, the world was just the two of them on the quiet platform. People getting off the train smiled as they passed. They had seen this scene many times. It was a small, beautiful part of their daily journey home. Daniel worked in a big city, far away from their small town. The train ride was long, taking more than an hour each way. He left early in the morning when the sky was still dark, and he came back late in the afternoon when the sun was low. Some days were heavy and hard. His work was difficult, and the city was noisy and crowded. He often felt small and tired. But at the end of every single day, he knew one thing for sure. Buddy waited. Rain or shine, cold or hot, the dog was always there, sitting on the same spot on the platform. This simple, loyal welcome was the best part of Daniel's day. It made all the hard work feel worth it. Mr. Harris, the station worker, often watched them from a nearby wooden bench while he checked tickets or swept the platform. He was an older man with short gray hair and thin glasses. He had worked at this station for 30 years and had seen many people come and go. He wore a navy station vest over a light-colored shirt. He watched Daniel and Buddy with a gentle smile. "That dog has better time than our station clock," he joked one evening, pointing to the old clock on the wall. "He knows exactly when you come home. Never a minute late." Daniel laughed, a real, happy laugh that made his tired eyes bright. He was still on the ground, scratching Buddy behind his floppy ears. Buddy closed his eyes, enjoying the attention. "He listens to the train more than I do," Daniel said, looking up at Mr. Harris. "Sometimes I fall asleep on the ride home, but he always knows when I arrive." Buddy's loyalty was a quiet, steady thing, like the old station itself. It was something Daniel could always count on. For Buddy, the station was not just a place where loud trains came and went. It was not a place of goodbyes or long journeys. For him, it was a place of coming back. It was the place where his favorite person in the entire world always returned to him. The sound of the train was not a noise, it was a promise. The opening of the door was not just a mechanical movement. It was the start of their evening together. The station was the bridge between Daniel's world of work and their world of home. And Buddy was the happy guard of that bridge. As the last few passengers walked away and the platform grew quiet, Daniel stood up, picked up his backpack, and looked down at his best friend. "Come on, boy," he said. "Let's go home." And together, they walked off the platform and into the soft light of the setting sun. One Monday, Buddy sat in his usual place on the station platform. The sky was gray with heavy clouds. A cool wind moved through the trees behind the station, but Buddy did not seem to notice. His eyes were fixed on the empty tracks that stretched into the distance. He was waiting. His tail rested on the cold ground, and his floppy ears were alert, listening for the familiar sound of the approaching train. Mr. Harris, the station worker, stood near the small office. He looked at the old clock on the wall. The big hand ticked forward, 1 minute at a time. Then he looked at his own watch. He pushed his glasses up his nose and frowned a little. The train was late. This was unusual for the evening train, which almost always arrived at the same time every day. He glanced over at Buddy. The dog had not moved at all. He was like a small, furry statue, a perfect picture of patience. More minutes passed. The air grew colder. Buddy shifted his paws on the hard platform. He let out a small, quiet whine. He looked up at Mr. Harris, his brown eyes asking a question that he could not speak. Asterisk. Where's the train? Where is Daniel? Asterisk. Mr. Harris just shook his head slowly. He felt a little sad for the dog. He knew how much this moment meant to Buddy every single day. The world could change. The weather could be bad. But the train and Daniel were always there. Until today. Suddenly, a crackling sound came from the old speakers on the station roof. It was followed by a voice that echoed across the quiet platform. Attention, please. Day's evening train from the city has been cancelled. This is due to a problem on the line. We are sorry for this change. The train will not be arriving today. The voice was unclear, but the message was simple. No train. Mr. Harris let out a long, heavy sigh. He walked over to the edge of the platform and looked down the empty tracks one last time. He put his hands in his pockets. "Looks like nobody is coming today, buddy," he said softly, his voice full of sympathy. He knew the dog was special. He had seen this beautiful friendship between Buddy and Daniel grow over the years. This was the first time he had ever seen the train fail to arrive. Buddy did not understand the words from the speaker. He did not understand Mr. Harris's sad tone. He only understood what he could see and hear. He saw the empty tracks. He heard the silence where the train's whistle should have been. But his loyalty was stronger than his confusion. He stayed right where he was. His tail was still, lying flat on the ground. His eyes remained focused on the dark, empty space where the train always appeared. Hope was a powerful feeling, and Buddy was full of it. The sun began to set. The gray clouds turned a soft pink and orange color at the edges. Soon, the sky darkened to a deep blue. One by one, small yellow lights turned on in the windows of the quiet houses around the station. The day was ending. Mr. Harris went inside the tiny station office. He turned off the lights and locked the door with a loud click. The station was officially closed for the night. He walked back to Buddy, who was still waiting in the growing darkness. "Come on, Buddy," Mr. Harris said gently. He reached down and softly stroked the dog's back. "It's getting late. It's time to go home." His voice was warm and kind. He felt a deep connection to this loyal animal. He wished he could explain what had happened to make the dog understand that waiting was useless tonight. But Buddy did not move. He lifted his nose toward the tracks, sniffing the cold night air. It was as if he believed the train might still appear out of the darkness, a magical light in the night. He was sure that if he just waited a little longer, he would hear the familiar sound and see his best friend. Mr. Harris waited with him for a few more minutes, a silent friend in the quiet night. They said, "Good night, Buddy," and walked slowly away towards his own home. A long time passed. The station was completely silent now, except for the sound of the wind. Buddy felt a sharp feeling in his stomach. It was hunger. The feeling pulled at him, telling him it was time to leave. With a heavy heart, he finally stood up. He walked slowly away from his spot, his head low. He stopped more than once to look back at the empty, dark platform. Each time, he hoped to see the lights of the train, but there was only darkness. The next day, Buddy was back at the station at the usual time. He felt a little nervous. What if the train did not come today either? He sat in his spot, his heart beating a little faster than normal. The afternoon sun was warm on his fur. The old clock ticked. Then, in the distance, he heard it. A faint whistle. Buddy stood up, his tail starting to wag, slowly, then faster and faster. The train pulled into the station with a loud hiss of its brakes. The doors opened, and there he was. Daniel stepped out onto the platform, wearing his blue jacket and carrying his small backpack. Buddy couldn't hold back his joy. He ran towards Daniel with so much energy and excitement. He barked happily and jumped up, his paws on Daniel's legs. People on the platform smiled and laughed at the happy reunion. It was a beautiful sight. Daniel knelt down and hugged Buddy tightly. "Oh, you must have missed me yesterday," he said, laughing. "I'm so sorry, Buddy. The train line had a problem. I couldn't come home. I'll find a way to tell you when things change next time, I promise." He held the dog close, feeling his friend's pure happiness. Buddy did not understand the words problem or promise. He only understood the feeling of safety and love. He felt the warmth of Daniel's hug. He felt the relief of his friend's return. Everything was right in his world again. His loyalty had been rewarded. As he licked Daniel's face, he knew that some bonds are strong enough to overcome any unexpected silence, and that a new day always brings the chance for a happy beginning. One Friday evening, the train arrived at the small station, just as the sun began to paint the sky in soft colors of orange and purple. The doors opened with a gentle hiss, and Daniel stepped onto the platform. He moved more slowly than he usually did. Instead of his familiar backpack, he carried a small, dark suitcase in his hand. His shoulders were low, and his whole body seemed to carry a heavy, invisible weight. He looked tired, much more tired than a normal day at work should make a person feel. As always, Buddy the dog was waiting for him. The moment he saw Daniel, his tail began to wag with pure happiness. He ran across the platform, a little ball of golden brown energy, ready for his favorite part of the day. But when Buddy reached Daniel, he suddenly stopped. He tilted his head, his floppy ears moving slightly. Something was different about his friend. Daniel's smile, usually so big and bright, was small and weak today. And his eyes, which normally sparkled with kindness, were quiet and wet, like a cloudy sky ready to rain. Mr. Harris. The old station worker was standing near his small office, watching the familiar scene. He noticed the change in Daniel, too. The young man's usual bright energy was gone. Mr. Harris walked over to them, his steps slow and careful on the concrete platform. He looked at Daniel with kind, worried eyes. "Long day, son?" he asked, his voice soft and gentle, trying not to push too hard. Daniel looked up from Buddy, and a small, sad smile touched his lips for a moment. "A long week, Mr. Harris," Daniel answered. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. He bent down on one knee, putting the suitcase on the ground beside him. He reached out and placed his hand on Buddy's soft head, stroking his fur. Buddy leaned into the touch, happy to be close to his friend. "They closed our office today," Daniel said, his voice so low that Mr. Harris had to lean in to hear him clearly. "The company is moving. They are going to a bigger city, far away from here. I might have to move too." The words hung in the quiet evening air. Mr. Harris's friendly face fell. His smile disappeared, replaced by a look of deep sadness and concern. He looked from Daniel's tired face down to the happy, unknowing dog. Buddy was busy licking Daniel's fingers, his tail giving a small, hopeful wag. He only understood that his friend was here, and that was all that mattered in his world. But Mr. Harris understood. He knew what this news meant for all of them. "So, Mr. Harris began, his voice heavy with emotion. "This station, it won't be your stop anymore." It was not a question, but a sad statement. The idea felt wrong. Daniel and Buddy meeting at this station every day was a part of life here, like the old clock on the wall or the sound of the evening train. It was a simple, beautiful routine that made the small town feel a little warmer. The thought of it ending felt like a piece of the station's heart was being taken away. "Maybe not," Daniel replied, his eyes still on Buddy. He continued to pet the dog, his hand moving in slow, steady circles. "There is a small chance. They told me I can try to work online from my home here, but it is not a sure thing. The managers are not sure if it will work for my job. I have 1 month. 1 month to find out and to decide what I have to do." His words were full of uncertainty. The future, which once seemed so clear and simple, was now a big, confusing question. The days after that conversation began to change. They slowly turned into weeks, and the simple, happy routine at the station started to break. Daniel used the train less and less. Sometimes he would arrive at the station on a bus that stopped on the main road, and he would walk over to see Buddy. On those days, he looked stressed, often talking on his phone with a worried expression. Other days, he did not come at all. A whole evening would pass. The sun would set, and the platform would remain empty. For Buddy, the world became strange and unpredictable. His routine, once as reliable as the sunset, was now a confusing game of waiting. Some days were filled with the familiar joy of seeing Daniel, even if it was just for a few minutes. But many other days were filled with long, silent hours of waiting. He would sit by the wooden bench, his eyes fixed on the empty train tracks, his ears listening for a sound that never came. Mr. Harris would often bring him a bowl of water and sit with him, gently stroking his back and speaking to him in a low, comforting voice. "He's busy, buddy," Mr. Harris would say. "He's just very busy." Then, on the last day of the month, the evening train pulled into the station. The air was cool, and the sky was a deep, dark blue. Daniel stepped off the train. He was carrying the small, dark suitcase again. Buddy saw him from his usual spot, and his heart leaped with hope. His tail began to wag, a fast, happy rhythm against the quiet evening. He ran to Daniel, his paws making soft tapping sounds on the platform. Maybe everything was okay now. Maybe the sad, quiet days were over. Daniel knelt down as Buddy reached him, but his hug was different this time. It was long and tight, a hug that felt like he was trying to hold on to something he was about to lose. He buried his face in Buddy's soft, golden fur, and for a long moment, he did not move. He just held the small dog, breathing in his familiar, comforting smell. Buddy could feel the sadness in the hug. He stopped, wagging his tail, and just stood still, pressing his body as close to Daniel as he could. "I don't know what will happen next, boy," Daniel whispered. His voice was thick with emotion, and it was muffled by Buddy's fur. I really tried to stay, but it didn't work out." He pulled back a little, looking into the dog's trusting brown eyes. "But I promise you," he said, his voice shaking just a little, "I will not forget you. I will never, ever forget you." The words were a heavy promise, full of love and a deep, painful goodbye. Buddy could not understand the words, but he understood the feeling behind them. He understood the tightness in Daniel's hug and the sadness in his voice. He could not offer words of comfort. He could not tell Daniel that everything would be okay. His only answer was to press closer, to push his head against Daniel's chest, as if he believed that the simple weight of his small, loyal body could be enough to hold his friend in place, to stop him from leaving, and to keep their world from changing forever. The old station clock ticked quietly above them, marking the end of a chapter and the beginning of a long, lonely wait. Hello and welcome. Let's learn English with a story. Today, we continue our story, The Dog Who Waited at the Station. This is part 4. Let's begin. Weeks passed at the quiet little station. The days grew shorter, and the evenings came faster. At first, the routine was the same. The sun would begin to set, painting the sky in soft colors of orange and pink. Mr. Harris would start his evening tasks, sweeping the platform and checking the old clock. And just like always, Buddy, the golden brown dog, with the green collar would arrive. He would sit patiently behind the yellow line, his eyes fixed on the distant tracks, waiting for the train that brought his best friend, Daniel, home. But one evening, something was different. The train arrived with a familiar hiss of its brakes. The doors opened, and a few people stepped out onto the platform. They walked past the wooden benches and toward the small town. The doors closed, and the train slowly pulled away, its red lights disappearing into the growing darkness. Buddy stood up, his tail wagging a little, expecting Daniel to appear from the station building. But the doorway remained empty. Daniel did not come. Buddy whined softly, a small, confused sound in the quiet air. Mr. Harris watched him from his office, a worried feeling growing in his heart. The next day, the same thing happened. The train came, but Daniel was not on it. And the day after that was the same, too. 1 week turned into 2, and then 2 weeks turned into a month. Each evening, the train arrived, a symbol of hope. And each evening, that hope faded as the train left, leaving behind an empty platform and a lonely dog. No phone call came for Mr. Harris at the station office. In the past, Daniel would sometimes call if he was running late or had missed his train. But the phone on Mr. Harris's desk was silent. There was no message, no letter, no word at all. It was as if Daniel had simply vanished. Despite this, Buddy did not give up. His loyalty was a simple, powerful thing. Every single evening, he returned to the station. His routine never changed. He would trot onto the platform, find his usual spot behind the yellow line, and wait. Sometimes, he arrived even before Mr. Harris finished his afternoon work. The old station worker would see the small, furry shape sitting there, a lonely figure of patience, his floppy ears pointed toward the tracks, listening for a sound that brought only disappointment. Buddy's world had become small. It was just this platform, this yellow line, and the endless wait for a friend who did not return. The people in the small town started to notice. The story of the waiting dog began to spread through the quiet streets. When they passed the station in the evening, they would see him. A woman carrying her shopping bag stopped one day and looked at the lonely dog. She spoke to her friend beside her. "That dog is still waiting for the young man," she said, her voice full of sympathy. "Every day, he is here. It's so sad." A young boy, walking home from school with his mother, pointed at Buddy. "Look, Mom, it's the waiting dog," he said. He looked at his mother with wide, curious eyes. "Maybe the man will come back soon," he added, his voice filled with the innocent hope of a child. Everyone who saw Buddy felt a mix of sadness and admiration. His simple, unwavering hope was a powerful thing to see. He became a quiet, famous resident of their small town. He was no longer just a dog. He was a story, a lesson in loyalty that everyone knew. Mr. Harris felt a deep responsibility for Buddy. The dog was a link to Daniel, a living reminder of the happy days when the young man's laughter filled the station. When the last train of the night departed, leaving the platform empty and dark, Mr. Harris would try to gently guide Buddy home. He would walk over to the dog, his steps slow and heavy. "Come on, Buddy," he would say softly, his hand resting on the dog's warm fur. "It's time to go. Nothing else is coming tonight." Buddy would always look up at Mr. Harris with his big brown eyes, seeming to understand the kind words. He would let Mr. Harris lead him away from the platform, but he never left without one last look. He would always stop at the edge of the station, turn his head, and look back down the long, empty track. His eyes would search the darkness, as if he believed that if he just looked hard enough, he would see the familiar shape of his friend walking toward him. Then, with a quiet sigh, he would finally turn and trot slowly into the night. This small, heartbreaking ritual happened every single evening. On the very quiet nights when all the passengers had gone home and the station was silent, a new friendship began to form. Mr. Harris would finish his work, lock up the office, and find Buddy still sitting on one of the wooden benches, as if he couldn't bring himself to leave just yet. On these nights, Mr. Harris would sit down next to him. He started talking to the dog, not with simple commands, but as if he were talking to an old friend who could understand everything. The silence of the station seemed to invite these quiet conversations. One evening, as a cool wind blew through the station, Mr. Harris looked at Buddy and spoke his thoughts aloud. "I think he wanted to stay, you know," he said, his voice low and thoughtful. "I really do. He loved this town. He loved you." He paused, looking at the distant lights of the houses. "But life is complicated. Sometimes it just pushes you to a place you didn't plan to go." He knew Daniel had dreams of becoming a great artist, dreams that were bigger than their small town. Maybe that was where life had pushed him. Buddy didn't he understand the words jobs or dreams or moving away. His world was much simpler. He only knew the feeling of happiness when Daniel was near, and the deep, aching emptiness now that he was gone. He rested his head on Mr. Harris's worn-out shoes, a silent gesture of comfort and shared loneliness. He didn't know about the pressures of life or the difficult choices people had to make. He only knew that this platform was a place where he had always waited for someone special. The seasons began to change. In this town, snow did not fall and the winters were mild. But the air grew colder and a damp chill hung over the station in the evenings. The leaves on the trees surrounding the platform turned from green to shades of gold and brown. They fell from the branches, swirling around the wooden benches and empty tracks. The world was changing, moving forward into a new season. But for Buddy, time stood still. Every evening, as long as the trains were still running, the golden brown dog with a green collar would appear. He would walk to his spot, a silent guardian of a memory. He sat through the cool winds and the early darkness, his small body holding a hope that never seemed to fade. His heart was simple, and his loyalty was pure. It did not ask for reasons or explanations. It only knew how to wait. And so, he waited, a small, warm light of faithfulness in a world that was slowly growing colder. This is the end of part 4 of our story. In our next part, we will see what happens to Buddy and Mr. Harris. Does hope finally arrive at the station, or does a new beginning wait for them somewhere else? Thank you for learning English with us today. We will see you next time. Goodbye. The station was quiet, as it always was. The sun shone in the sky, a little warmer now. It was the beginning of spring. The trees had small green leaves, and the air felt fresh and new. Buddy, the loyal dog, still waited on the platform. He watched the trains come and go. He watched the people step on and off. But he no longer looked for Daniel with the same sad eyes. His heart was calm, like the quiet afternoon. He understood that some things change and some things must end. His waiting had become a quiet habit, a part of the station's gentle rhythm. One afternoon, a new sound filled the air. It was not the sound of a train or the voice of Mr. Harris. It was the sound of a young girl's soft laughter. Buddy lifted his head, and his floppy ears moved. A train had just arrived, and its doors slid open. Passengers stepped down onto the familiar platform. Among them was a girl named Maya. She was about 16 years old. She had a long, dark hair in a simple braid and wore a red hoodie. A large backpack was on her shoulders. It looked heavy, but her thoughts felt even heavier. Maya was moving to this small town to live with her aunt. She had left her home, her friends, and her entire old life behind her. She stood on the platform, feeling small and a little lost. Everything was new and strange. The station, the houses, the quiet streets, it was all different. As she looked around, she felt a warm, soft touch on her hand. She looked down and saw a beautiful golden brown dog. It was Buddy. He had walked right up to her. His tail moved slowly from side to side. His eyes were kind and full of a gentle curiosity. Maya was surprised. A small smile appeared on her face. "Oh," she said softly. "Hi there." Buddy did not bark or jump. He just pushed his head gently against her leg. His gesture was simple, but his message was clear. You are not alone here. From his favorite bench, Mr. Harris watched this quiet moment. A soft smile grew on his face. For the first time in many months, he saw a buddy greet a stranger with that special, quiet excitement. It was the same gentle welcome he had always saved for Daniel. Mr. Harris stood up and walked over to the girl and the dog. "He belongs to the whole station," Mr. Harris said in his warm voice. "But it seems he has chosen you today." Maya laughed, a soft and musical sound. She knelt down to pet Buddy, her fingers stroking his smooth fur. "I used to have a dog back home," she said, her voice a little sad. "Maybe he knows I miss him." Buddy did not know about Maya's old life or the dog she missed, just as he had never understood Daniel's job or why the trains were sometimes canceled. But Buddy understood something very simple and very important. He understood that a person standing alone on the platform needed a friend. He could feel her quiet sadness and her heavy thoughts, and so he offered his company. Over the next few weeks, Maya became a familiar sight at the station. Every morning, she came to catch the train to her new school. Every evening, she returned, and every time, Buddy was there. He would walk with her to the edge of the station road in the morning. He would be waiting for her on the platform when she came back. Sometimes, while waiting for her train, Maya would sit on a bench and do her homework. She read her history lessons out loud to Buddy, and he would lie at her feet, listening to the sound of her voice. Other times, they just sat together in comfortable silence. Maya would rest her hand on his back, feeling the warmth of his fur. The simple act of petting him made her feel less alone. She found comfort in his steady, quiet presence. The station was no longer a strange place. It was the place where her new friend waited. One evening, the sun set in beautiful colors of soft orange and pink. The light made the whole station look warm and peaceful. Maya looked down the long, empty tracks, and then she looked at Buddy, who sat faithfully beside her. "Do you still miss the man you used to wait for?" she asked him in a quiet whisper. Buddy did not answer with words, of course, but he looked at her with his calm, steady eyes. His look seemed to say, "I remember him, okay? And I'm still here." A gentle smile touched Maya's lips. "Thank you for staying," she whispered, stroking his head. The station had changed over time. People came and people went. Jobs moved to other towns, and lives shifted in new directions. But some things remained the same. The old clock on the wall still ticked. The trains still arrived and departed. And Buddy's heart stayed the same, loyal, patient, and full of love. He was ready to welcome anyone who stood on that platform, anyone who needed a friend, anyone who was looking for a new beginning in this small, quiet place at the edge of the tracks.